Well, good morning. Welcome to episode 19, The Ward Family. Before we get too far along, this is Carl Ward, your host. And before we get much into the details of this episode, if you're a first time visitor to the channel and enjoy your visits to the old Ward family cabin, hit that subscribe button and join our little family. We'll enjoy having you along for the journey. We've got some events that we'll report on in our next episode, but with a little bit of luck, we'll have some very successful opportunities with Quarter Moon Books and Gifts this week, and along with Cape Fear Seafood Company in Porter's Neck later. Let's get started with this particular episode because it's really personal. It's about the Ward family. And I think the thing that we want to discuss is the research that went into the ancestry of this particular family and the reality of what was happening because we know what were in the letters and all of the historical context. And then, of course, what we want to do is address the story. How does all of this fit into the story? Uh, a few couple of years ago, my son Brian got the itch to discover the family heritage a little bit. I had done quite a bit in the past, uh, doing some of the basic research that would be associated with this particular effort. But Brian wanted to go a little bit deeper. How far can we go? So he, in fact, invested in the Ancestry.com program and purchased the international version so that we could literally go back to those periods in Europe, especially in England, Scotland, Wales, and the Irish Republic. So the background was very insightful. It gave us the opportunity to delve into just how far back could we go. And as it turned out, we went all the way back into the 1540s before we hit the magic box where it says we can't give you any documentation beyond this point. That was very helpful. More importantly, it allowed us to clearly see the line of lineage all the way up from contemporary times, my son, myself, and so forth. And as we went back, making sure we could track exactly to James Ward and his family and where they came from. So, with that information in hand, uh, we had a clear lineage that we could work with. The letters were helpful because they are talking in real person, first person accounts of what's happening in their life. And I think that was very beneficial to me personally. And I know for Brian, simply because now we understood what the contemporary times of the 1860s were like, what was going on, what was the family like. And that gave us a good idea of what the family farm and how it operated. So the research, all of that time studying the files and documents and records that were in the North Carolina Museum of History were very beneficial. But at the same time, they were not telling the personal story. They were telling more about the unit and the organization and some of the principal characters of that 26th Regiment, as an example. So, what I want to do is take a few moments just to talk about um, the family. What was going on at this time? Well, in this particular case, the father of the Ward family clan, the patriarch, if you will, included four brothers. Those four brothers had large farms. They were all adjoining and they worked the land together. Their families were usually large, anywhere from 10 to 13 uh, husband, wife, and children. In those days, it was necessary to have large families simply because you needed that hand labor to be able to work those farms. And so the sooner you got a family started, the better off your family was going to be. I want to emphasize that point because this collective farm, to use that phrase, the Ward families included over 1,000 acres of farmland. A lot of that in what's known as the Green Swamp in southeastern North Carolina, and it's been uh, cleared for growing crops, fields of all kinds of vegetables, corn and wheat, things of that nature that a family would live by. But the more they grew, the more they could sell, the more they could sell, the more they had that they could improve their property. So the Ward family is land rich, but cash poor. And as a result, every nickel, dime, and dollar that is spent has to be for a great purpose relating to the family. And that's the all inclusive family. So what belongs to one pretty much belongs to the other. The families traded members of the family for farm hands. The issue that I think that always needs attention is there's always this presumption that if you're from the South, you must have been a slaveholder. And the reality is that was grossly an over exaggeration, if you will. What was occurring with the Ward family farm and many farms around them was those family farms were self sufficient. And from that perspective, they were managing that farm with the resources they had at hand. When they needed something, a wagon, an extra mule, a horse, a plow is broken and needs to be replaced, and you borrow one from the other family. All of this was a communal operation, and it was very successful for its time and place. So land rich, cash poor, a phrase that's used in our family's heritage for decades upon decades and generation upon generation. It's just how we recognize life. We use our money wisely or as best as we can. And then the idea is that when we need it, it's there. And when we don't need it, we're saving it up for when we will need it because we always know there are going to be hard times. So this will play an important part in the story as you read the letters from both the father, the mother, the wife, the cousins, all of the family. You're going to hear these stories being told about what's going on at the time. Another point I want to make about this particular family is they're very Christian based. Schooling, education, they're almost all very literate. They read, they write, and as they say, they can cipher their numbers. So they know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but I won't go much further than that. I'm not sure the geometry, trigonometry, calculus, and other things have gone through the family heritage very well. We're not great at math, and we thank Microsoft for great programs like Excel that allows us to figure out how to calculate things a whole lot simpler. But the point is, uh, they're educated because they use a family Bible. The mother, the matriarch of the family, in fact, is conducting classes. Uh, I use that term loosely. On the kitchen table, in the yard under a big oak tree or a hickory tree. Uh, all of these events are taking place. She's using the Holy Bible. She's using 1 foot square slate tablets and chalk. And that's how she teaches the family. So they learn to write verses out of the Bible and then sound those out. And they learn their alphabet and they learn how to read. And of course, they're reading the Bible, which is very significant. The family has that tradition of a Christian background. And as such, the idea of slavery is absolutely intolerable in their eyes. So even though there are people and farms much larger that have slaves, they're very reluctant to commune with those particular organizations or farms or families. Now, I'll say that because there is an incident actually mentioned in the book that speaks to the father who actually goes to when there's a massive crop that's just being very fruitful for the family. Suddenly there's a problem associated with that because of the need for additional farm hands. What he does is he goes to the local farm and he offers to pay to rent slaves to assist with the hands for a very limited time. The owner of the slaves, no, no, absolutely not, will not charge you for that. More importantly, you're not going to pay the slaves, which my father is off, or the patriarch had offered, and that was he was going to pay them one dime for a day of work for each slave. The owner refused to let him, took his dime per slave for that offer. But more importantly, my father says, and I'll pay each person a penny for their service in the field. The owner got very upset about that and said, no, 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 you can't do that. We don't want them to have money. He objected to that and eventually took a very short number of individuals that went to assist with the family farm. But it was something that was so rare and uncommon that, as he said in a diary, I had to pray on it a great deal and ask for forgiveness. So, just an example of how this family learned their letters and ciphers, and how they prayed and practiced their faith, and how even when they were faced with situations that were uncomfortable, they always found a way to pray and ask for confession. Well, just a little history here on the family and where they are in the story. And now we're going to move on to a really short analysis of what's the relationship with the family I've just described, based on reality, if you will, on our family history, more importantly, the members of the family in the story. They are one and the same. Names are slightly different, and there's a reason for that, and I won't go into that at this point. But the reality is each and every one of these people are very real. The story you're hearing and reading in the book is, in fact, their story. And I hope you'll appreciate the fact that many of the things that you're seeing, hearing, and viewing and imagining in the book are very real. Well, that's the real family, and now you've heard the ancestry of the family Wards as we've gone through history. And we're very proud of who we are, and where we came from. More importantly, we're very happy where we're heading. Well, with all of that said, uh, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Don't hesitate to join us on Instagram at a Carl Ward, and if you visit the author's website at accarlward.com, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I think we'll see you on the next adventure.